Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Tracy Show. My name is Tracy. I'm glad to have you here. First off, yes, I know this is an hour earlier than what we normally do. We will return to 7 o'clock p.m. next week, but I had to make some adjustments because my guests um, couldn't make that time, so I always try to be mindful of that. And before I get started and let my guest introduce herself, please smash that subscribe button. We have a goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and so far we are at 114, which means we have 886 if my math is right, but it's probably not because math was not my favorite subject in school. But hit the smash the subscribe button. Remember to comment. We rarely get comments, and you can always comment after the video is shown. Support us on Patreon. Like this video, share this video, and here is something new for the audience. Subscribe to our Substack. We have a Substack at tracymedia.substack.com where every now and then I'll write something and it'll be right there. It should be free, but you can't always upgrade. But keep that in mind. And check out the new logo, everybody. We got a new logo. Um, been having it for a week. Either everybody missed it or nobody said anything about it. So I am joined by our guest today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we will get started.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Marsha Feinland, and I am a member of the California Peace and Freedom Party. We're a ballot qualified party in California. It was founded in 1967, and we're still here, which sometimes amazes people. And we are now a socialist party, but I guess you would say, a small s socialist, so that anybody who kind of agrees with our program and platform is, or even not, you can always register Peace and Freedom Party because we're ballot qualified in California, and you can also join and be active in any way you want. I'm also a retired public school teacher, so I'm very interested in education issues, and I volunteer now with children's programs now that I'm a retired teacher, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So you kind of answered my first question about what the Peace Party is and when it was founded. So thank you for answering that question. But I want to ask a different question. I don't live in California. There's what? It's what, 2 o'clock where you're at?
Right now it's 3:03 p.m.
So it's a 3 hour difference.
That's right.
So if I were living in California, why would I join the Peace and Freedom Party as opposed to the Democrat or Republican Party?
To me, that's an easy one, but people always seem to have that question. Um, we don't feel like, and I certainly don't feel like I joined the Peace and Freedom Party. I never was registered in any of those other parties, because I really believe that working people should have some control over their government and over their lives, and that the society should not be ruled by money and by greed. And both the Democrats and the Republicans support the current system. And some people think, oh, well, the Democrats are more for the people. But when it comes down to it, and you can see what the flip flops that the Democrats are doing nationally, even though you're not here in California, you can see that, oh, well, even though we're for the environment, we're still going to build that pipeline. We're still going to do more oil exploration. We're still going to, oh, well, we can't really have a tax on wealth. We'll try, but they won't let us. Or we really can't do anything about police violence. Or all of the things that we really can't have healthcare for everyone. We can have healthcare for a lot, maybe a few more people. But as you can see, I have a sign back there, healthcare is a human right. We're for a publicly funded healthcare system that covers everybody in for anything that you need. We're for, oh, well, we'll reduce, do the Democrats will say, well, we'll reduce student debt by $10,000 or $20,000, depending on what kind of loan you have. But these students now they owe $50,000, $100,000 or more. And
Exactly.
and we should just have free, it shouldn't even be, well, we're for abolishing the student debt, canceling the student debt that exists, but we should have free education from the preschool to graduate school for everyone. It shouldn't be an issue. If you go to other countries, like I was in France, and not only is there free public education, but students are subsidized in terms of their living expenses because just paying your tuition is only part of it. So, we have a long way to go. We're the richest country in the world, and there's no reason why we can't have a system that helps that fulfills everybody's needs. And it's not just a question of, at least in my opinion, some people, we have different ideas about how you get there in the Peace and Freedom Party, but we know we want to always in our platform we have, um, basically all the things that people need. I really believe that only if people have real control over their government. If ordinary people like me, I've run for U.S. Senate 4 times. If regular people who live regular lives um, and aren't don't need campaign contributions from giant corporations and stuff like that, if we had more control over the way things are run, we would run things um, so that people got what they needed.
Yep. And I do know the reason why we don't have anything that you just named. It's an intentional failure.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we could literally, I forget how many millions of people are going to, are in danger of losing their Medicaid
Mm-hmm.
because somehow the pandemic emergency is being lifted, even though COVID hasn't gone anywhere. And now you're going to have millions of people that have to re enroll in Medicaid, do all that redetermination all over again. And that's going to be catastrophic. And you wonder, well, why does that happen? And then you look at the money and
Yeah.
where the money is coming from and who's getting supported, those type of things. And I wanted to ask this question in terms of what you just said the Peace and Freedom Party believes in. That sounds very, very similar to the Green Party.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between the Peace and Freedom Party and the Green Party of California?
Well, actually, we're getting closer together. When the Green Party was formed, it wasn't not an explicitly socialist party, and it still isn't, but it's more, they're moving towards being, believing or stating more that they're for socialism, at least some of them. We are an explicitly socialist party, and the other part of it has to do with our process. The Green Party has and I know you've probably talked to Green Party people, and it's better if they explain their system themselves, but their decision making process has to do with reaching consensus. And you can't always do that. And then people who don't agree are blocking, and they're really pressured to either join to make consensus, or they can't talk about certain issues, or their meetings go on forever, whereas in the Peace and Freedom Party we operate by majority. So that, if we have a proposal, we take a vote and the majority wins. And if it's really contentious and it's not that important an issue, we kind of drop it. But most of the time we're able to pass our platform, pass our resolutions, all of those things in a few hours without having to have this really long process that we see the Green Party going through. But I'll tell you one thing, that we have been joining with the Greens in kind of an electoral alliance in California. In the last election, where there are a certain number of constitutional offices, like governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, insurance commissioner, attorney general, stuff like that. We got together with the Green Party and we were able to reach an agreement to support a certain slate of candidates, four from each party. So, in other words, we supported each other's candidates for different offices, so we didn't compete, and that was very attractive to people. They liked that, and it also helped us to maintain our ballot status. We have to get a certain percentage of the vote, so our candidates did not compete with each other for that little percentage of the vote that we need to stay on the ballot. So yeah, we're coming closer together, I think, in terms of what we stand for and the way we operate. But I don't. You've got the Democrat and the Republican Party, and they're pretty close together. And nobody says, why do they have two parties? And they're sometimes you wonder.
Right. But the way you were describing it, I'm like, that sounds exactly like, almost, not exactly, but very, very, very similar to the Green Party that I know.
In terms of what we stand for?
Yeah, in terms of single payer health care,
Right.
um, elimination of student loan debt.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is what the Greens believe. But I wanted to talk about something else that's totally out of left field. So you said you're in California. How many people is it in the state of California?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. All I know, uh, it's we'd have to look. I could look on my phone.
Because I'm about to make a point,
It's
audience,
a
and you'll.
big state. What I would want to say is that it's a very big state. It has close to 20% or something like that of the U.S. population. So the reason that's striking to me is because I ran for U.S. Senate, and in 2004, I got something like 230,000 votes, and that was more votes. But of course, I was not elected. I was sixth out of, at that time there were nine, seven, eight parties on the ballot in California that year. Uh, and I came in, I think, sixth out of the eight. Um, but and in the country, I came in ninth because California is so big. But I got more votes than 14 people who were in the U.S. Senate because their states have so much of a smaller population.
Yeah, because there's a reason I'm asking this
Mhm.
particular question, because I want to talk about ballot access.
Right.
So when you all are, you're saying, I want to run, I want to be in the Peace and Freedom Party, that's where I want to run it. Do you have to collect the signatures? Is there a certain amount of signatures you have to collect? Um, or is there just you pay this fee and you're on the ballot?
Yeah, and it's a good question because people should know that ballot access is different in every state.
Absolutely.
Every state has their own rules. So there was then and there is now in terms of ballot access for the Peace and Freedom Party. And the reason that I say that is that in 2010, a proposition got passed on the ballot called Prop 14. And that made it so that you could vote for anyone in the primary. You didn't have to vote in your party. But only the top two got to the general election.
The jungle primary.
Yeah, and it was really bad because we have a top two system, and that's why at this point we don't get on the November ballot. The real election is in the primary because that's when the only office that isn't governed by that is President of the United States. All the other offices that are statewide are in that primary. So this is the way it is now. There, okay, you only need something like 40, maybe 40 signatures locally or 60 signatures statewide to get on the ballot. Plus, you pay a filing fee,
Okay,
and it
because
doesn't matter what party. But the way it used to be, what? Oh, then there was a lawsuit way back in the late 60s or early 70s because people said the filing fee was too much. So you could get signatures in lieu of filing fee. But because it's called nonpartisan, you need 10,000 signatures to waive the whole filing fee. So you end up, the most I ever got was maybe 2,000 signatures, and then I paid 4/5 of the filing fee. But it used to be that for the smaller parties, you needed 150 signatures from your own party to get on the to waive the filing fee. So there was much better ballot access because you didn't have to have thousands of dollars to run.
Yeah. So I just looked this up because I was just uh, curious. There are 39.24 million people in California. And you just described one of the easiest ballot access um, that I've ever heard. Because I live in the great state of Indiana, which I always complain about. I complain about this every week, so everybody knows it. Our ballot access is 2% of the last Secretary of State vote. So, in other words, if 600,000 people vote, you have to get 20% of that.
Is that just to run as an independent, or is that to have a party on the ballot?
That's to have a party on the ballot. There are three parties that do not have to do that because they have ballot access: the
Right.
Libertarians, the Democrats, and Republicans. So they don't have to do that for every office. U.S. Senate is the only one you have to gather signatures.
Okay, so we actually, to get the party on the ballot, you need to have, I think it's 2% of the registration or something like that. 2% of 2%. You have to have 2% of the people who voted in the last gubernatorial election. That's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, ours is Secretary of State, and I was going to say I think you
guys
is governor.
Yeah, so to maintain the ballot access, we either have to keep our registration up, which we're doing actually, our registration is growing right now. People want something different. They want peace and freedom. But to stay, the other way you stay on the ballot is to get 2% of the vote. 2% of, I got my numbers mixed up. 2% of the vote, and they changed it to the primary because we can't, we never get on the ballot in November, except for president. So 2% of the vote for one of those constitutional offices in the primary keeps us on the ballot. To first get on the ballot, you have to have a registration drive and get something, a certain percentage registration.
Yep, so remind everybody, smash the subscribe button. And here comes my next question. So I want to make sure I'm getting this right. So if you are running as a candidate, not to get the party on the ballot, but just like you as an individual,
mm-hmm.
If you don't get that, and you were running for senator
mm-hmm.
in the jungle primary,
mm-hmm.
that doesn't sound like a third party candidate has much of a chance because they take the top two, right? They take the top two, and then they face off. So it could be a Democrat versus a Democrat, a Republican versus a Republican. Okay, now I'm understanding. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think I got that, but now I understand.
Yeah, and that's for everything except president.
And
unless you're running for local office, and then those are nonpartisan anyway.
Okay, and so when you're not, if you still wanted to run as a senator, could you do a write-in candidacy, or is it just that's it? You got to be top two.
The only thing that works is every now and then there's a district, not for U.S. Senate or one of the statewide offices, because there's always lots of candidates running for that. But say where I live in Berkeley, California. It's very liberal. And once a liberal Democrat gets that seat, very often no one runs against them. So that's where you can get in the top two because no one runs against them. See what I mean?
Right.
But once after the primary and they pick the top two, there's no write-ins in the general election.
Oh wow! Okay, I take that back from what I said about California. No, that's not.
This whole top two system is really bad, and it exists in California and in the state of Washington. And other states have tried to do it, but people were smart enough to vote against it. But there are still states that are trying to institute some type of top two or top four or something like that.
And you all don't do the runoff thing, right?
There's instant runoff votings in localities.
Okay, that's what I was like. I bet there's not instant voting runoffs, but there are. So I stand corrected. So we're going to move on to your run for office. And I know it was a while ago, but I said I was going to talk about it. Talk about your what office did you most recently run for, and when was that?
United States Senate in 20, I found my flyer. I don't know if you can see it. United States Senate in 2012.
Okay, so that was 11 years ago.
It sure was.
Okay, I thought for some reason,
Yeah.
pardon me, I have a bad thing. I don't know why I started sneezing now. Um, so were the laws the same in terms of the top two then? Okay, so that law
That's why
was
it was the last time I ran. That was the first year that
so
top
that makes
two,
sense.
that was the first year that top two went into effect. So that was the first time that I did not get to the November election. And it cost a lot of money, and it I felt it wasn't worth it because people don't pay that much attention to the small parties, but we did get 5 minutes on KTVU. I did get on a few television stations. There's a station called the California Channel that gave every candidate a half hour or an hour. I don't remember. It was a nice interview. Um, and they ran it a lot of times so that you really did get I never really expected to win, but I wanted to help build a movement and, put forth the ideas that are important. So once we didn't get into the November election, we didn't have access to all of those forums. So it really didn't feel to me worthwhile running after top two went into effect after I experienced it once. But we have had candidates. People are still running Peace and Freedom Party. They kind of have to make their own campaign and their own events. And since we did this, we called it the Left Unity Slate with the Green Party in the last election, that got some attention. So there are ways, but it wasn't, to me. It wasn't something I wanted to do anymore.
So, and I'm just thinking out loud here. It sounds like it's a better bet to run for like city council, mayor,
Mhm,
those type of
mhm,
offices,
mhm.
and because the governor is also top two, right?
That's right. The
Okay.
only one that isn't is president. Or you can run, like you said, city council. I was actually elected in 19, it was a long time ago, 1994 to 1998. I served on the Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board. So I was elected locally because locally you really get to talk to people. You can go door to door. You don't need TV time. The League of Women Voters has forums. Community groups have forums. So I had run for school board before that. And then I ran for Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board, and I actually won that election. But, the kind of issues I'm interested in talking about, although I am interested in rent control and rents and fighting homelessness and stuff like that, um, it 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 didn't do, I guess. I felt like people, once they got the rent board they wanted, they stopped being engaged, and I I I like to see political activity on the part of the people, not just myself being, somebody who sits up there and helps make the rules.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, well, it makes more sense to run for the. And are you all trying to change that law, or you just kind
Oh,
of said, it is what it is?
oh, no, no, but we had a lawsuit. We had a lawsuit. We got together with the Green Party and with the Libertarian Party, and we hired an attorney, and we had a lawsuit. But we never, and I think we appealed all the way to the state Supreme Court, but no one would hear it. I mean, basically, we didn't get a hearing. And it was some interesting. It looked like the judge was sympathetic, like was listening to the arguments, but for some reason, the way they crafted the law, I guess it worked for whoever it works for, not us.
Because that's just I'm just like, well, wait a minute. I thought ours was bad. I'm sorry. I found a state that's worse than Indiana. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Mm.
I thought, okay, ours is terrible, but at least you still have. You could still, if you lose in the, we don't have that jungle primary.
Mhm,
You lose
mhm,
in the primary, you can run as an independent.
mm.
Although it's a write-in, but the chances of that. So when you were running, and I know this again, this is 11 years ago. What lesson did you learn about running in terms of reaching out to people? Because again, I'm pretty sure California didn't have 39 million people back then, but still you have a large state to cover.
Oh, that's
How did
right.
you go about covering such a large state, or did you cover a
Mhm.
large state?
Well, I'll go back to 1994 when I ran for Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board, because then I could knock on practically every door. I mean, we had a slate of candidates, so between us, we could really reach the voters of Berkeley, and especially the voters that we wanted to reach, the people who needed to have, you know, to have a good rent stabilization board. Um, Statewide, um, there would be. I went all over the state. Sometimes community colleges or colleges had forums for candidates, and it was really interesting because it was mostly the minor party candidates who showed up. But I have to say that that was before 2012. So I ran in 2004, 2006, 2010, and 2012, 2008, because senator is a 6-year term, there was no senator election. So I was I was the Peace and Freedom Party candidate when parties could nominate their candidates in the primary, which was just 2004, 2006, and 2010. In 2012, it was an open primary. So you didn't even have to be in a party, you just ran. And that was completely different. But when I was on the ballot in November as the Peace and Freedom Party candidate, I was able to go to college campuses when they had forums and invited candidates. I was able to go to different clubs or, you know, uh, Long Beach, for instance, the city of Long Beach, or the League of Women Voters in Long Beach, which is in Southern California, had had an election fair, and they invited candidates to come. And the only ones who went to that one, that was, I guess, 2004, were myself and the Libertarian candidate for Senate. But at least there were two of us. And then we had a table, and there was a group called it was Latin American, or Mecha, Mexican American. It was a political action committee of Latino people in California, which is a large segment of the population. And they had actually two forums, one during the primary and one during for the general election. And that was in Southern California. I live in Northern California. I went all the way up to Redding, which is in the northern part of California, to speak at a community college. And while I was there, I think I was able to speak on a radio station. So, yeah, I was able to travel and to go where I was invited. And sometimes the people in my party would have events, because we have party members in different parts of California, and they would host house parties or get a local hall. So, yeah, if you're on the ballot in November, people are interested. The primary was a whole different thing. When I was in 20, so this is what happened in 2012. Um, there were something like 24 candidates on the primary ballot for US Senate. And I think there were even two Peace and Freedom Party candidates. Somebody else ran because there was no party primary. And if there had been, I would have won the party primaries. So I say that just because I was a better known candidate than the other person. I'd run before. Um, it could be I wouldn't, but I had won the primary before. Let's put it that way. So in 2024, I was open to going to speaking to people at their community groups. The only groups that had pre-primary forums, events, were Tea Party groups. Do you know the Tea Party?
Absolutely know who
Yeah.
that is.
So the Tea Party are very far right-wing people. And there was one in South San Francisco, and I got invited. I said, I'll come to your forum, but I want to be assured that people are going to listen because, I'm different than your other Republican candidates who are mostly responding to your information. Oh, yes. I went to that, and it was bedlam every time I opened my mouth. People were jeering. And I just, I did my little school teacher thing and said, I'll wait for the class to settle down. And I looked straight at the organizer and I said, I came to this forum to participate just like everyone else. And I was assured that people would behave. And people didn't behave. And I finally just got up and left because there was no point being there. Nobody was listening to me. Then I went to one more, which was further north in California in a county called Yolo County. And it was in a library. And it was the first one was in like the Veterans Hall or something. This was in a library and it was being recorded. So I said, oh, I'll go, because maybe people will come because it's in a library. It's the only public forum in town for U.S. Senate candidates. And some of the people from Peace and Freedom Party in surrounding areas, a few of them came. But it was kind of the same thing, but not as bad. So I didn't have to leave because people did listen, but it was not a friendly audience. So that's what it was like at 2012. And that's why, it didn't seem like something I needed to do anymore.
Now, you said that you have candidates running now. What
Mm-hmm.
offices are they running for?
Oh, okay. So we get people who run for U.S. Congress. We have someone in Southern California named Jose Cortez who ran twice. He just ran for the second time in San Diego County. Um, we had a really good school board candidate who probably like to be on your program, who ran in Los Angeles County, who's a teacher in another school district in Los Angeles. Jose, they were both really good candidates. We had, like I said, we had candidates for lieutenant governor, secretary of state, insurance commissioner, and I guess it was only three. I thought it was four. Um, in the last statewide election, and that's mostly because we kind of have to. Well, we want to, but they don't get that much airplay. But that's when we ran that left unity slate with the Green Party. So the Green Party had a governor candidate and an attorney general candidate, and one more. I can't remember what all the offices are at the top of my head. Oh, controller. Oh, so we had a treasurer candidate and they had a controller candidate, um, something like that. Um, and all of our candidates did pretty well. A number of them got the 2% that they need to keep the party on the ballot. Our party actually is not in danger of falling off the ballot. We have over 110,000 registrants in California now, and the requirement is much lower. Um, but we want to stay active. We want to have the people who there are people who do pay attention, and if you don't run candidates, people think you don't exist. So the reason we have more statewide candidates than local candidates is because everybody in the state sees you on the ballot when you run statewide, right?
Right.
We have to put our resources into our candidates, and we don't have rich people in the Peace and Freedom Party, so we don't have a lot of people making big donations, and it costs a lot of money to run now. So in order to pay all the filing fees, and then you have to pay for your if you want a statement in the ballot pamphlet, you have to pay for that. So we have to do a lot of fundraising for our candidates. So we can't run for everything.
Understanding. You just got to my, and I see two people watching. Pretty sure I'll be more than that later. You can also put your questions in the comment section. I always try to get to those, so you're watching, so you can put your questions in. But you just got to the one thing that frustrates me it just frustrates me is, and I don't know how you all address this, especially when it's a third party. People don't seem to have problems donating to the Democrats and Republicans. Matter of fact, it's like some people do it at will. But it seems like the people that would support third parties, one, don't have enough money to make a donation,
Mm-hmm.
or they're hesitant. What do you say to a person well, we know what you say to a person that doesn't have it, they don't have it, so they can never give what they don't have. But what do you say to that person that's hesitant to donate to a candidate in the Peace and Freedom Party?
Hmm. That's a good question. I guess I don't really, the way how do we raise money? We used to do mailings, but mailings got kind of kind of expensive. Although that's actually the best way to raise money. We have a website, and people really do contribute on the website. We have a PayPal button on the website to contribute to candidates, and if people like the program, we get people who contribute monthly to the Peace and Freedom Party, just not huge amounts. Um, Candidate fundraising. I guess mostly I got funding from friends and relatives to get on the ballot and to do my ballot statement because I was too busy just trying to get people to listen to the message, to take the flyers, right? To listen. So I didn't like to start out asking for money. But yeah, fundraising is a big problem. We've been talking about it all the time because we do want to raise money for our candidates now, so that more people can run. Um, and I know that especially Jose Cortez was able to raise money in San Diego. He had a very good volunteer team, but I'm not sure exactly what he did. I think it's just um, he's very, you're very forceful. You say what people say want to hear, and then you have to give people a goal. So, for instance, the candidate statement for a statewide candidate is $25 a word. So we'll put something up that says something like, buy a word for this candidate, $25. Buy a sentence if you can, right? $200 will get us a sentence or something like that. So that people see exactly what you're spending the money on, and then they'll donate. And I have done that.
And you said $25 per word.
Per word.
So if I did like I would say, my name is Tracy. My name is Tracy. My name is Tracy. That's $100.
Right.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought you were going to say sentence, but you said each word.
But let me tell you what's really not too bad about it. I mean, it's bad. It used to be free. So just having to pay for it is bad. It used to be that if once you've paid your filing fees and everything, you got a ballot statement. But at least statewide, you could do $25 a word. You can do 4 words. I wouldn't do my name is Tracy. I would do something like tax the rich and corporations or something like that.
I understand. I was just like, well, wait a minute.
What's good about it is once you get even one word up there, you get your name, you get your website, and your contact information if you want to put it up there. So all you have to do is have a word and the website, and people can go to your website and read everything you want them to read.
Okay,
so that's useful. But when you run for, I ran for state senate in 2008, and then my ballot statement in the local ballot pamphlet was $7,000, and you got 250 words, and you could not do 1 or 2 words or 5 words. Or I used to do, when I ran statewide, I would do something like 25 or 50. You could have a fairly decent statement for, a few $100 or $1,000 or something. But statewide, you had to spend a lot more money. You had to do the whole thing. And that's what's really unfair. um, that you have to raise that much money to put anything in the ballot
Yeah,
pamphlet.
because you want to have a candidate statement because you want people to be educated about why you're running. That would make sense. But I'm like, well, if you put 3 words, that's $75. What are you going to put? You got to make it seem like, and you got to put your name in it so people would.
Actually, you don't need your name because your name is there.
Oh, well,
See,
your name is there.
you get things for free. You get your name, you get your party, you
You get
get
your
your
picture?
website. I don't think there was there might be a picture. I can't remember. I don't think there was a picture. But you do you get something so that people can find out more if they want to.
Well, that part's good because I'm
And
like,
also, every party gets a statement in the pamphlet.
is
So
that free?
that's free.
I'm like,
Yay.
is there something that's free
Yeah,
here?
the party gets a statement. Yeah, and that's free.
Wow. So, and that's the thing that I always talk about with third parties is because I consider myself a member of a third party, we're at such a disadvantage. If you
Mhm.
look at, I'm going to just say President of the United States, national office, it was almost $1 billion, very, very close to $1 billion spent on 2 candidates to make
Mhm.
$450,000 every year. You
Right.
literally spent if you divided it. Let's just
Mhm.
say one spent 500 million, other spent. You're spending $500 million for a job that pays four hundred and fifty
Mhm.
thousand dollars a year. That makes no sense to me.
Oh
It,
no, because they become lobbyists afterwards. They get speaking tours. They get lots, and plus they don't spend their own money. They spend other people.
I mean, I
They
know they don't
spend
spend
the
their
money
own
of the
money.
corporations who are going to get huge contracts, so that the whatever the corporations put into the campaign is peanuts compared to what they get out of it in favors. And
And that's why the
and
corporations
that's
don't want to
Democrats
stop
and
it.
Republicans,
Republicans, exactly. And
right?
people are
Both
like,
parties.
well, why do corporations give? I'm like, well, if you think about it, they're giving few dollars, but they're getting $1 billion contracts. I would do it. If I'm just paying this little bit of money and I'm getting $1 billion contract, that little $800,000 means nothing. But that
Mhm,
$1 billion contract means a whole lot. And
mhm.
people don't. I listen a lot when politicians say, especially the Democrats, because they're really good at this. Oh, well, just get rid of Citizens United. Okay, so they leave out a whole bunch of things in there. One, that takes the Supreme Court to get rid of Citizens United. There is an alternative they could do that they'll never talk about. You could just stop taking you could just stop taking PAC money.
That's right.
You could just say, you know what, I'm not taking PAC money. I'm going to do small dollar donations.
You could have a law that gives every candidate equal access.
Exactly.
You could have free media for candidates. There's a whole, like you said, there's a whole bunch you could do to take money out of politics.
Yeah, but I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Are you saying to wait for the Supreme Court? You know, they're look
No,
at what
don't
their
wait for the
makeup.
Supreme Court. Just take the money out of politics by having public media be free for candidates. When I ran for U.S. Senate and I was in the November election, for instance, we got TV time. Not a lot, but some. And if there was more of that, if there was like public financing, then you wouldn't have to. I mean, yes, the rich, the rich corporations and the rich candidates could get more, but at least everybody got something and had
Exactly.
access to it.
And we don't have cable access like we used to.
Right.
We and that's how old I am, everybody. I remember cable access where the candidate went on a small little cable channel, and
Mhm,
now that's just
mhm.
completely gone.
That's
But
right.
I'm like, you could do there could be a lot of things that are done now, but of course they're not going to do it. So I'm like, saying get rid of Citizens United, I'm like, okay, are we serious with this? But people seem to fall for it. I'm like, no, think about what they're saying, and that brings up my next question. And remember, for those who are watching, you can drop in your questions in the comment section. But how do you how can I phrase this question? So a lot of arguments that I hear against voting for a third party is voting for a third party is a wasted vote.
Mm.
I hear this argument a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I truly believe it's not, what
Mm-hmm.
would you, when some, if you were out campaigning for, I don't know, Mayor Berkeley, and you were going to run for Mayor Berkeley, and someone says, well, me voting for you is a wasted vote. I'd rather vote for, I don't know, the Democrat running for the office,
Mm-hmm.
knowing good and well they know they're not going to get anything. What do you say to people who say voting third party is a wasted vote?
Well, you're wasting your vote when you vote for something you don't want, right? You have to vote for what you want. um,
That
right?
is a very good answer because I'm always like, but wait a minute, no, I don't. In the last presidential election, I always use that as an example. I knew good and well there was no way I was voting for Trump. There was no way I was going to vote for Biden. And I think what people assume is if I didn't vote for a third party candidate, I would have voted for Biden. I'm like, no, that's a mistake.
That's right.
I'm not voting for him,
That's right.
period. And it's like, it's hard to communicate. I wish I was better at communicating. You
Mm-hmm.
made it very simple. So now I'm going to start using that
Yeah,
argument. It's
and
like,
that's the thing. That's the trip they pulled on Ralph Nader. If Ralph Nader hadn't run in 2004, Al Gore, whatever year it was,
2000.
2000, Al Gore would have won. Not necessarily because all those people who voted for Ralph Nader might not have voted for, they didn't want to vote for Al Gore. They
Well,
didn't have
yeah.
to.
And they're still blaming Jill Stein, who got
Oh
like,
yeah,
what, less than 1% of the vote.
right,
I'm
right,
like, she
right,
didn't get a lot of votes. So
right.
what are you talking? No, you just ran a bad candidate. That's pretty much what you did. But
Yeah.
that argument always tears at me
Mm-hmm.
because I just don't understand it. I'm like, are you telling people not to vote if they don't like? What happens when a person just literally does not like the Democrat and does not like the Republican and can't see
Mm-hmm.
themselves voting for it? Don't vote? Are you telling them don't vote? That I've never understood that argument. So thank you for
Oh
like
yeah,
saying,
and
yeah,
just what you said, more people get engaged in the system when right? They stop not voting. They start voting. They start paying attention when they see something that they like that is going to be meaningful for their lives.
oh, we finally got a comment. Let's see. Mathematically, it is still true, not their responsibility to run in indifference to the big two, but math is math. Yeah, but what about us? And I know that's Thea's, um, who's saying that. I always say, but what about the people that don't want either? What are we supposed to
Right.
do? Just stay at home and be like, okay, I'm just gonna stay. I'm gonna sit this one out.
Right.
No, I'm not. I'm gonna find a third party candidate that I like. So I've always wondered that. Another one I've always wondered that I want to get your opinion on. Oh boy, this one drives me up the wall. You have to vote for the lesser of two evils
Mm-hmm.
argument.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna let you talk about that.
Well, and I talk about this a lot actually because the more we do that, the more we entrench the two parties and make it impossible to get anything that isn't evil. In other words, the more we say, okay, I'm going to vote for the Democrat gets in, the Democrat kind of moves to the right? Because they see the writing on the wall. Well, for whatever reason, the Democrat does not deliver on the promises. So then the Democrat is bringing us the Republican in the next election because people will vote for the other party. Gee, I voted for this guy. I didn't get what I wanted, so I'll vote for the other party. And then the other party, you don't get what you want. The guy is abominable. So you switch and you vote for the other party. But there's only two choices. So they
That's what.
entrench each other. They entrench each other, and it gets less and less likely that we'll ever get a third party or that we'll ever get a different kind. Actually, what we need is a proportional representation system where all parties are represented. But that's a huge discussion.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's one I don't think Americans are ready for proportional representation at all.
Right.
We can barely get instant ranked choice voting. It's like,
Right.
well, wait a
Right.
minute, let me explain it. So I want you to answer this question on the screen here, and that's why I left it up there so long, because I actually want you to address this.
Oh, the question up there? I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Because
Yeah.
this person is saying, no one is saying don't vote your principles, just don't play make believe about the consequences. Oh, so basically, this person wants me to admit that, sure, I'll vote my principles and then I'll take my lumps. And we have seen some lumps on the Supreme Court, I have to admit. But that was manipulated. That was kind of manipulated by certain people to get that Supreme Court to happen. I heard some programs
You
about
mean
it.
the Heritage Foundation? You could not possibly be
I
talking
think
about the Heritage Foundation.
there's
No, I don't believe you.
there's there's different groups that I mean, it was just incredible that Trump was able to get what 3 Supreme Court
And
justices
Obama couldn't get one
in one term. So, but as long as we have this entrenched system, it, it it's going to keep being like that. You know what I mean? We really have to look at the whole system and not just the circumstances and how these elections work. And so being part of a party is not just running for elections, but it's advocating for real change.
exactly. That is exactly correct. And I think I know people. People are so frustrated with the two-party system that they say they're independent. Um, but here comes where I want you to address this too, and it's not a question, it's more of a statement. So I find that people will absolutely agree with the ideas of a third party candidate. They'll say, oh, this person is exactly what we need. But somehow that doesn't make it to voting day.
That's right.
So somehow between them saying, yes, I agree with that candidate, and going in the polls, something's lost. And I don't know what that is.
Oh, they're scared. I mean, people, we live in terrifying times. Well, especially when Trump was running. I had friends who were longtime Peace and Freedom Party people, but they voted for Hillary Clinton and they voted for Joe Biden because, I mean, there's no way they could stomach Trump. So, I mean, people are scared and they're rightfully scared. It's just the answer isn't just, I don't know, it's a big picture question. If we're just people who vote every 4 years or every 2 years and don't do anything else to make real change, we're not going to get any change. We live in a society where people are really alienated and they're not engaged in civic activity. So voting is like this really isolated thing. And if we had, I don't know what, but if we had more social groups, right? If we had more groups that were advocating for certain things and tied that together with their political views and started supporting a different type of party system so they could get a party that spoke to their needs. It has to be from the bottom up. It can't just be people voting on election day. It has to be more than that.
It has to be an act. It's a daily thing, not just okay. Because voting is like the basic. That's like the minimum thing you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Most Americans don't, but that's like the minimum thing you should be doing. But then there's those city council meetings, those mayor meetings, those governor it's those type of things. Because we're not going to make a big difference federally because they're going to do what they're going to do. But locally, you're more likely to make a difference, and that's my plug. So, again, remember everybody to smash that subscribe button. Smash it, please, please, please. We got yet another comment. We have elected government when we need representative government. That we can, I'll agree with you on that one. Yes, absolutely, positively, yes.
Yeah, and some things we need to do to change it so that representation is more fair. because that's where you can start talking about a proportional representation. That's where you could talk about not just single member districts, but multi-member districts, so that there's more representation of different people in the government.
Exactly, because I look at a state of California, which is racially diverse.
Mm-hmm.
It has a large black population, large Hispanic population. There's just a lot of diversity there. But when you look at who's in office, that's not, unless I'm missing something, I could be an outsider looking in and making criticisms. I'm like, okay, that doesn't seem to be representing the people of the state.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks all kind of like homogenized.
Yeah, I there's some movement, more women in office, for instance, and Latinos. I think Latino people in office. I think, but yeah, it's certain parts of the state. It's all white. It's all white men. Certain parts of the state, and actually, people look at California and think it's so liberal, but actually, California is a very divided state. It's just that there are more people in the coastal and metro areas that tend to vote more liberally.
And I'm thinking like you're talking about like Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, Los Angeles. We actually have pretty good registration in Los Angeles in Peace and Freedom Party. Yeah.
Okay, so here it comes the questions. I always do this with every candidate. I talk about 3 issues. I ask your opinion on them, and we go from there. And usually, I think I know how the Peace and Freedom Party feels about this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Reparations.
Oh, well, we have reparations for African Americans, for instance. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm glad you didn't say, well, you didn't include other races like the Democrats tend to do. You just specifically said African Americans.
I think there were reparations for Japanese Americans or Japanese people who were interned in World War II. I'm not sure, but I thought, so, it seems like African Americans seem to be the last people to get reparations. I mean, you're right. There are a lot of oppressed groups, especially, say, Native Americans in California, who are among the poorest people in California. But the big issue, I mean, people were promised 40 acres and a mule, and where no one ever got it,
Okay, so you're batting 100% so far. So the next issue, well, you've already answered. You said you're for single payer health care, so I won't go over that one. Again, here's another issue that I think I know where Peace and Freedom Party lands at. A woman's ability to make choices over her own body.
Okay, well, that's a real easy one, because you see healthcare as a human right, but the other one I carry is, I just altered it. So
abortion is healthcare.
But I spent a lot of time there used to be this group called Operation Rescue that tried to prevent women from accessing abortion care in clinics, and I used to do clinic defense. And Peace and Freedom Party, that's in our platform. Absolutely. And free, part of the free healthcare system.
Okay, so far 2 for 2. So here's the other one, and this one, unfortunately, we had another mass shooting. This time it was in Nashville, Tennessee, and we always hear these, outraged politicians, especially in DC, that don't do anything. It's the thoughts and the prayers that they want to send instead of actually, having laws that, that could actually, I don't know, ban assault weapons, background checks. But this
gun laws.
Yes.
So we don't actually, a lot of people, we get bad rep on this because we're for preserving the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment.
Understand.
But that doesn't mean you can't have sensible laws.
Absolutely.
Right? You can't have, how does having trigger locks on weapons so that children can't access them prevent people from having their right to...
I think we're all for common sense gun laws.
Yeah.
And the right
but we don't have that in our... we don't have that in our platform. But we are working on our platform. But that's a bad rap we get because we do have Second Amendment, preserve the Second Amendment, and in our platform. But like I said, that doesn't mean you can't have some common sense gun laws to prevent this type of madness that's going on.
And the thing, and here, and the offshoot of that is, I've always thought, and I know this is a crazy idea of mine. Of course, I tend to think big, not small. We need some sort of gun registry,
Hmm.
like some sort of mechanism where we know, okay, Sam owns 3 guns, Jill has 5, etc., because it seems easy for people to get guns. I mean, I live in Indiana, and people from Chicago will come to Indiana because basically
Hmm.
you can be as young as I want to say 15 so bad. You could be
Wow.
15 and get a gun.
Hmm.
No background checks, no
Hmm.
anything. Just
Hmm.
give that child a gun. There has to be something we can do, but it doesn't seem like our Congress, our Senate, and I'm talking nationally, not statewide, want to
Hmm.
do anything. And this is like what, yet another mass shooting. And I don't know. I mean, I know what I think could stop it, but I don't know if that's going to happen because we have the NRA. But
Yeah.
I won't talk about the NRA because I try to keep my show profanity free.
So, part of it is the guns, and part of it is what people do with the guns, and part of it is the way society works and the alienation that we have. So I mean, I know that guns kill, and it's not just people that kill, but it is also people that kill. And it's people who are so disaffected that they don't have compassion for their fellow people, or that they feel, see what I mean? I think it's a society issue that has to do with guns, but it's also more than just having to do with guns. Because when you talk about a registry, people have a lot of stuff that isn't registered, right? You can
Yeah, they
have,
really do.
yeah, you can have a registry. That doesn't mean everything's going to get registered, right? You can say people have to have a background check when they buy a gun, but they could buy a gun from the guy down the street who's selling a gun at a yard sale. I mean, not at a yard sale, but you see what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, I see what you
I
mean.
mean, there's no way you're going to regulate. There's no way you're going to regulate and count who has what guns and where they come from. And and I mean, I could bring up police killings too. I mean, some of the mass killings that we have, or some of the, there's a lot of people who get killed because of police abuse, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so, I mean, there's a lot of that's kind of a whole other issue. But they they walk around with guns all the time, and I think there've been some cases where off-duty police officers
I think I
shoot
asked that
people.
question because when I look at these mass shootings, it's always the military style weapons. It's
Uh-huh.
never the
I see.
handgun or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
or
yes.
the or the rifle. It's always the
Mhm,
military style weapons that I'm
mhm,
like, you really don't
mhm,
need that.
mhm, mhm.
You don't need, because the point of the Second Amendment was so that people could protect themselves.
Actually, the point of the Second Amendment is so that people could form a militia and overthrow the government if it was oppressing them.
People, yeah, I know, but I don't know. I wanted to make it simple,
That's
for me.
that's actually the point of the Second Amendment. So you could say, and it's a well-regulated militia. So then you could say that the gun should be in a certain place where people could arm themselves when they wanted to form their militia and do what they needed to do. Some people find that scary, um, depending on what the belief system of the militia people is, right? Depending on
Right. And
what
what
your
type of
army, what
militia
your
are
army
you
is
talking
for,
about?
what your army is for. I don't know. I, you know, I'm very sympathetic to the gun issue because, especially when it comes to children, because children get access to guns, and it's very tragic things happen, and also because of, like you said, the mass shootings, and but I think so. People I know who live in other countries point to this country and say people in other countries can't get guns the way people in this country can get guns, and that's why this stuff happens. But I think it also happens because people in this country are very alienated. They don't feel like they're part of a system or part of anything, and that state of mind can create a mass shooter. Doesn't need to, but it can.
Yeah,
So,
I understand. So, and again, I said 45 minutes, and it's been
oh,
an hour. So I'm going to end on these last two questions.
okay.
Um, because again, I always have like a ton of questions. I'm like, oh, what about this? Um, how? Let me backtrack this question. How would you advise someone um, who wanted to run as a third party candidate? What would you say to them if
Mm,
they live in California and they don't want to be a Democrat, they don't want to be a Republican, but they want to run for office and
mm.
possibly under the Peace and Freedom Party? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, join. I don't believe that. I mean, there are a lot of people who write to us and say we want to be your presidential candidate. And you got to look at that and say, why does this person want to be a candidate? You know, Sometimes it's like an ego thing, or that so when someone tells me I want to run for something, I say, are you part of a group? You know, uh, join a party and become active in the party and become familiar with what the party stands for, and get together with a group of people who can support you. Because running by yourself, even if you belong to a party, I mean, you could have the party name under your name, but that doesn't mean you actually have a group of people who support you, who are going to help you campaign, right? So I would say, make sure you're part of a group effort, something like that. That's the first piece of advice, I think.
Okay, let's see. I say we got one more comment. Your option is to pass a law which makes sense, which makes more sense. Laws about guns or laws about mental health crisis. I think a combination of both, but that's just me. U.S. leads
Right.
here, so there's plenty of room to do better. True. But I know that my spirit cannot take any more mass shoots. It's just,
Right. Right.
I'm
Right.
just
Right.
like, I cannot. I'm like, we've got to do something. I don't know what it is. I have no expertise to talk about this issue, but it's something. It's like, especially the cops. You talk about that. Um, it's just, I don't know. It's just something that we have to address. And I think it's a both approach. I don't think you can just have one or the other. We definitely have a mental health crisis that sometimes can lead people to do things that they normally wouldn't do.
Yeah, but what leads to those mental health crises? I mean, it's true that there's always going to be mental health issues in any
True.
society.
There's
But
job.
I think you have to look, like I said, look at the whole picture. What is it about this country that creates those conditions?
Yeah, we're
Tracy,
creating a.
can we wrap up pretty soon? Because it's like
Yes, ma'am. I was just about to ask you.
we're over an hour.
Yes, ma'am. We certainly are. So, if you could tell us where we can find you, or
Oh,
the Peace and Freedom Party, that would be
yeah. Well,
wonderful.
I would go on our website, because actually, just the way you found me, Tracy, was that you made an inquiry at the Peace and Freedom Party website, which is www.peaceandfreedom.us. Can that be typed in somewhere? I don't know.
I will add it later. I
Okay.
will add it
I
after
think
this.
you might have done peaceandfreedom.org. That still works. That's our old website, but it transfers you over to .us. So if you go to Peace and Freedom Party website, and you let me see if I also have, yeah, we also have Twitter. I'm looking for a report. I'm really bad at this. So we also have a Facebook page, and we have Instagram, and all that good stuff. I'm just looking for the, but you can definitely find us on the website. And there's a place where you can do an inquiry, like contact us, and then somebody will get back to you, just like we did for you, Tracy. The Peace and Freedom Party Facebook page is something like pfp.ca.official. I'm pretty sure, but I'm looking for. I wasn't prepared for that. I should have been, like any good. Oh, here we go. Is this? Yeah. I'm looking for the paper where I put all that on, and I seem to have recycled it. Oh, here it is. Okay, good. Okay, so we have our website, www.peaceandfreedom.us. Facebook is pfp.ca.official. Twitter is @peaceandfreedom. Instagram is peaceandfreedomca. And we have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/California P&FP.
So those are all the ways that you can find about the Peace and Freedom Party. As usual, I will link the website in the description in about 20 minutes. I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank Marsha for being so patient. Remember, we will return to our 7 o'clock p.m. time next week. Join us then. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Remember to comment on this video even after you see it. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and have a fantastic evening.
Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome.